So, welcome, Perennial Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. I think you're in for a special treat. Here with a special guest, someone I've known for quite some number of years. He's new to the business in the financial industry, and he'll share more about that. But Mark Bertrang from Wisconsin, right? And I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast. You're going to not only love his wisdom, and he's going to share a bunch of it with us today, but you're going to love his voice. I mean, he comes from a unique background. I've always enjoyed listening to just him speak, which is fascinating. So, Mark, thank you for joining me on this podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Wow, now the expectations are so high. I don't know if I'm going to live up to anything that you just said, but I will try to make it up as we go. So we will try to impress as many people as we possibly can.
That's great. I know you will. I know you never fail to impress every moment I've been around you. So listen, before we get started, and this is why I always try to bring on even folks who are advisors in across the country, because it's always, I think, good to hear different perspectives. You know, as we were chatting before we even started this, is we're in a constant learning mode, and I'm trying to learn as much from other advisors and other people as I can. I think, and hopefully our listeners here will also get some benefit from it. So, Mark, before we get rolling into any deeper financial conversations, share a little bit about your background. I know it's kind of unique, and I think people appreciate it.
Yeah, it was funny that you were talking about the golden tone of my voice. I wish I could say that that was actually a gift. It was actually a created skill. Oftentimes I will tell people in a galaxy far, far away, long, long time ago, I actually worked in the broadcasting industry in the early 1980s. For about 5 years, I worked in broadcasting, and it was fun. It's actually an industry that hardly even exists any longer, because everything is becoming so automated in life. But it taught me how to communicate with people. It taught me how to ask questions. And I am still learning, because you were talking about learning through a lifetime. I'm still learning to shut up when I ask a question and just allow people to speak, because I think that we all have a tendency to probably speak more than we actually listen. That's probably, I would like to think it's probably one of the most important gifts that I have, but I keep on working on that. Actually, I started in the financial services industry in 1987. And I worked for a company for about 8 years and basically found that I had 1 year of experience 8 years in a row, and then became independent. And I just believe education is a very, very important thing. I had shared earlier that I believe that life is kind of like, we're all like tomatoes. If you're green, you're growing. And once you become ripe, you basically start rotting. And you have to have continual learning in your life. I just got our quarterly report for our firm from our accountant. And accountants are great for documenting what has happened in the past. And I look at the amount of money that we spend over the quarter, over the months, over the year in education. And sometimes I'm kind of blown away, because it seems like I'm still paying for a college education. And that was a long, long time ago. But there are many people, and this is unfortunate, that will literally say, I've learned it all. And I hope that never, ever happens in my life, because there's always something new. That's one of the reasons I enjoy listening to podcasts, from someone, let's say, like yourself, because there's always a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of knowledge that maybe I haven't heard before. And I think it's important for people to continue to be engaged in things like that. In fact, my favorite television channel, this is going to sound funny because we have a smart TV. My favorite channel is actually YouTube, because you can search anything on YouTube. And if I want to know about sciences or mathematics or inspirational speaking, it's all there at your fingertips. And it's amazing, because we live in this world that it's all free. So yeah, learning is a big, big thing for me.
No, I agree, and I get so wrapped up in watching sometimes, and now I see things that are popping into my view that I felt like I was just thinking about it, and it somehow gets into my line of sight, which is quite amazing. And there's so much there. But it's also important, right, just for listeners here, and we learn things, we hear things, and try to actually absorb what it means, right? We
Hmm.
can't just assume everything is accurate or correct all the time. We have to
Right.
always kind of test it. I think that's important. So, Mark, for your practice, I mean, going through, 30 plus years,
Hmm.
you know, what are some of the big things you've learned over the course of your time in this industry that have really shaped the direction of your company and how you help people financially?
Yeah, I think for myself, and everyone's practice is different. I think I have found that I cannot change people. I can only assist them and getting them from point A to point B if they want to get to point B. So, for instance, early in my career, I really wanted to help everyone. That was really the goal. It's like I felt like I was an evangelist. I needed to save every single person I came in contact with. And it probably took me more than a decade to realize that I could not do that. There are some people that they just can't be saved because they are not to that point in their life that they're really willing, let's say, to repent from maybe the bad habits that they have because they enjoy the habit so much. So early in my career, I spent a lot of time helping people budget. I spent a lot of my time helping them refinance maybe their home. I would actually get on the telephone with them and lower the interest rates on their credit cards. I would do all these different things to be able to free up money because they were living this lifestyle of tight money. And then not more than maybe a month or two later, I would be visiting with the people and they would tell me about this brand new bass boat that they bought for $40,000. And I would be like, where did you get the money to buy the bass boat? And they said, you saved us all this money that now we had all this extra money to be able to go buy this fishing boat. And that didn't happen one time, but examples of that happen again and again and again. And all of a sudden I realized I'm actually hurting people because I am creating ways for them to actually take on more debt. So I had to make the decision, I can't work with those people any longer. My perfect client, and what's really great with this industry is that we are all unique. We all have very, very unique practices. And my perfect client, I'm saying like the A plus client. And again, we work with A's and B's and C's, and then we have a cutoff. But I like working with people who are married one time. I love working with people that have kids under the age of 13 and over the age of 26 because I know teenage years are crazy. I love working with people that have some sort of faith belief. So they believe that there's something bigger than just you and I here on the planet, and eventually dying and becoming dust. So it has become for me more about family and belief systems and such. And that individual who, really wants to crunch numbers and such, I'm like not that guy. I can crunch the numbers, but it's more like, okay, so let's say we're going to be coming up with all this money. What's the purpose now? What are you going to do with it? Because I don't want to die with a huge amount of money and I died king of the hill. My favorite my estate plan is that I would like to die overdrawn at the bank. I would like to die with the last check that I wrote to be to the IRS. I would like to die with that check bouncing. And then 10 days later, after my family, my loved ones, have filled out the proper paperwork, I would like a mutual life insurance company to recreate all the money that I frivolously spent for the last 20 years of my life, my old age, to recreate it income tax free and make a deposit in the bank accounts of all the people and all the charities that I cared about during my life so they can do it all over again. That is my estate plan. That's exactly how I would like it to work out, because I want to be able to have my cake and eat it too. And a lot of people, it's just about accumulating, and they have all this money, but they're not living. They're not living today. And living for me is not necessarily going on trips everywhere in the world, though I would like to do that. But it's also about being able to give to my children while I'm alive, being able to give to nonprofits while I'm alive, and not be a stingy Ebenezer, Scrooge, because I don't think you win by being that person. He didn't. He had to have 3 ghosts come to him to enlighten him. And luckily, according to the story by Charles Dickens, he had enough time to basically repent from his ways and to realize that there was more in life than just dying with a boatload of money.
No, I agree with you. And it's we live in a financial world that talks about deferring money, deferring use of our dollars, right? And all those sorts of things. And we get, a lot of people sort of buy that hook, line, and sinker. And to your point, don't get to live and enjoy life. And to your point, impact their living years, right? In the way that they probably would want to. It's kind of a trade-off.
We had a client this last week that shared a story of a family member that accumulated $5 million. And this family member and their spouse were deferring, saying, when we retire, we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. Later on in life, we are going to do this. You know how it played out. Okay. The guy came down with cancer, and before his retirement, died. And then whatever money that he had left over that he never got to spend at all, basically went to a bunch of people that he didn't even care about. And bad plan. Very, very bad plan.
Well, and that's the type of stuff that, sometimes is maybe difficult for people to think through and spend the time, right, to really think what would they want to happen, right, in their lives and who they want to impact, because they think they have time to just do it all, right?
Right.
Time. We're, as far as I'm aware, right, Mark? I mean, I'm mortal, you're mortal. There are billions of examples of it actually happening, right? People passing. So we know what will happen. It's just sometimes hard to face that music and the reality of it. It's scary or uncomfortable. But,
yeah.
Funny.
Well,
I think of it, and we're going to talk about it more, because I look at it very differently, because I know that it actually gives me power and strength to do good things, right? Focus on the right stuff, because I will be gone someday. So it's fascinating. So, Mark, the one thing that sort of, you started off talking about helping people sort of find money, right? I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I don't know if this sort of segues into this concept, which I thought was an interesting word, and financial oscopy, right?
Financial oscopy.
Yeah, you coined this phrase, right? Did you trademark this?
It's actually a registered trademark with the United States Patent Office, and it's interesting because I have to give kudos to my wife. I'm the one who trademarked it, and I remind her once in a while, oh, I'm the one who owns it. But to be totally truthful and transparent, it was a name and a word that she came up with while we were drinking a bottle of Merlot many years ago, and I did not care for it. I thought it was inappropriate. In fact, I actually had an advertising agency contact me once, and it was really kind of funny, because they said, do you know the correlation what people are thinking about when they hear financial oscopy? And it's like, yeah, that's the whole deal, because we're going to go where nobody wants to go. And so we own it, and every once in a while we'll go online and make certain that nobody else is using it since we own it. But you got to be able to have fun with it as well. We have a lot of clients in currently where we're actually taking pictures of clients who are wearing medical white coats and, might have a stethoscope around their neck, and we're calling them financialoscopy fans. Because, just like you have fans, you've got clients that just love you. We're really fortunate as well because we've got clients that love us, and it should all be about love. It shouldn't be that somebody goes into an office and they go, "Oh my gosh, I got to go talk to Tom again. Ugh, I hate this. He wants to talk to me every single year." Well, I know you're not that guy. I would think that people probably are excited when they come to see you because it's like, oh, it's Tom. We get to talk to Tom because he's going to have these ideas and he's going to, lift us up and get us, inspired again for the next year. And that's what's really fun. It's like when I wrote my book, we kind of wanted something that was unusual as well. The title of my book is Investments Don't Hug, Embracing the Life Insurance Asset. And we've really kind of hung our shingle on investments don't hug because a lot of people just don't get that. It's like, well, what do you mean, that they don't hug? Well, it's okay. I've never hugged a certificate of deposit. I've never hugged a stock. I've never hugged an ETF or a mutual fund. And what we've found, because where I have the most passion, because people will talk about rates of return and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it goes up, it goes down. What do they say? Every 5 to 7 years, there's a recession. People are always unhappy no matter what. Either they're not getting a high enough rate of return or, the market is down and they're losing money. There's always this unhappiness. I have a clientele that deals with a life insurance asset. Those people are huggers. Now, most would say, oh, that's because somebody in their life died. And it's like, oh, yeah, we have people that die and they hug us about that stuff. But they're hugging us because they love the security that the life insurance asset gets them. Because my plan, I'm planning on dying right after my 105th birthday. That's what's on my calendar. Okay, because I got longevity in my family. If I die before that time, it'll be because I did something stupid like not look both ways when I was crossing the street. I'm very, very, very fortunate that I've got certain longevity in my family. So I'm thinking 105. I'm thinking slowing down as far as business about age 90 because I love what I do. Okay, so if I'm going to die at 105, what do I need life insurance for? Well, it's so I can spend all my other money better. And it's the place where I have my safe cash. And just having it sitting there, when you got hundreds of thousands of dollars in life insurance cash values, you don't worry about anything else because you've got something that is purely accessible. It's not being taxed. And you don't have to worry about what the stock market is going to be doing a particular day. That's why I love the whole idea of embracing the life insurance asset. And unfortunately, and you probably know this, Tom, that a lot of people just have never heard that before. And that's the big player. That is the big player because it gives you a sense of, not even a sense, it gives you the security that you just would not have otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. And, this goes back to your point that people can get so wrapped up in numbers and rates of return and, all these fun things. And listen, I enjoy talking about them as well. But, it gets back to why we do any of this stuff, right? To be able to protect our families, have a little certainty to ensure, like, to your point, either, if you live a long life, it's replicating these dollars for the next generation, or in the worst case scenario, which you come across this too, and we'll talk more about in your book, like stuff happens in life that we don't expect to happen, and we want to make sure our families can still live a life that we would want for them, right? If we weren't here. Right? And I think most people would say, yes, I would buy off on that if I knew how to do it, right? And not sacrifice, all these other things that I think I'm going to have to sacrifice to do it. And that's where I think some of the fun comes in to help open up people's eyes that is possible, that you can have your cake and eat it too, right? In all these scenarios by being open-minded and learning about it. So I love the name of your book, Investments Don't Hug, because I opened up my annual policy statements in year, and that's what I felt. I felt like giving it a hug because I knew what it was doing for my family, and given the turmoil of today, the craziness, it just did its job, and I didn't have to worry about it. So, what sort of brought on this book of investments? Don't hug. Like, what was the genesis of it?
So the way that this actually began is quite a few years ago. I actually came back to the office after attending a funeral of a client, and I asked my office manager at the time, "Could you take a legal pad and just write down all the deaths that I have walked through with families?" And she spent the better part of a day, just combing through the files, what are all the names of these individuals? And I want to say there were more than like 35 names. And this was really telling. I mean, we all work with different averages, is that 80% of them were 46 years of age or under. They were not old people. They were not old people. They were people in the prime of their lives. And I'm looking at this legal pad, and I'm literally taking a pen and I'm beginning to write down what was the situation. Were they married? Did they have children? What was their occupation? What did they die of? And I was literally putting together an outline for a book, and I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. But when I had finished that project, I'm looking at this legal pad and I realized I have a book here. I have a book here that people need to understand the situations, but also why did we put together the plans that we did? How did it play out before they died? And then how did it play out afterwards? Because again, none of us are getting out alive. We hope that it's going to be at an old age, but we know that, the population just doesn't wake up one day and everybody dies at the age of 85. My youngest death claim was an individual who was 28 years of age and had owned a policy I had written on him that was only in place for 13 months. And when I had seen his name in the obituary section of our local paper, without looking at the date of birth, I thought it was his dad. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing this is my 28-year-old client? What happened? And it was a freak accident because it was an immediate thing. And I had never met his spouse prior to the funeral because he was one of these guys that he handled everything. Okay, so I met with him and we put things together. But all of a sudden, I became the most important person in that church. She knew who I was when I walked through the line and I was coming up to her. And again, this is where the title came from, because the first thing she did, a person I had never met before, she embraced me. I mean, it was one of those embraces that you wonder, are we ever going to let go of one another? Okay. And to be in the position to say, because I was able to say, the money's okay. He made sure it was going to be okay. It is okay. And I know that this is a grieving part of your life right now. He made it in such a way that you would not have to worry about anything else. So mourn, have sorrow, but next week I'm going to reach out and you don't have to worry about other things. And to feel her body literally going limp in my arms, she needed to know that. She needed to know that. So in my office, we have a box of tissues because people go through crap all the time. People become disabled. Yes, people die. People lose jobs. Boy, I tell you, it's really great to have some permanent life insurance when you lose a job, because now I've got money that will allow my family and myself to be able to last. You know, I mean, we're kind of talking about death right here, but my clients understand the values that come into play with the life insurance asset. They're hugging people. And these are people that believe that they're going to live forever and ever and ever. They just like knowing that they're going to have this security that's there. And it's like you almost get religion, because you realize the importance of what it is that you're doing at that moment. And by the way, that was my very first death claim that I ever had. And I don't know any advisor or representative or insurance agent that has had their first death claim that has said to themselves internally, oh my God, I hope this works. Because it doesn't seem possible that somebody gives you this little bit of money, and if something bad happens, death or a disability, that you show up with this huge checkbook with money in it. And until you go through that the very first time, you almost believe, okay, this is hocus pocus. This better work. And when it does happen, it's like, oh my gosh, I have a superpower. I have a superpower to make certain that families are going to be okay forever. And what I mean by forever, there's some place in the Bible that they say that things can be affected for 7 generations. And I believe that. And the reason I believe that is because of the life insurance asset. This has now made a difference on where families who have lost a loved one, where their kids go to school. And that will make a difference as far as who they meet in school. And that will make a difference as far as who they will marry and what kind of children they will have and where their kids will go to school. The responsibility you and I have can literally affect our families, our communities, and if you really want to think outside of the box, literally how our nation looks like generations from now because of something that we did with a pen and paper.
I mean, that's absolutely powerful. And I you get back to why we do these things. It isn't just to make money, right? It's
No.
just wealth so you can die with it is the impact you're talking about while you're living and generations down the road. Like that can't be understated because, I had someone just recently tell me their friend who was 45 years old went to bed and didn't wake up.
Yeah.
And didn't have all that much life insurance or things in place. Imagine the change in trajectory of this family's life.
Forever.
Right?
Yeah.
And
forever.
It can't be minimized because, to that point, yeah, money isn't everything, but it certainly helps to help provide resources to people just to live. But to your point, like you want to work to feel you can to produce and provide value for people, right? That's part of it. And, it's sometimes you can lose sight of it because, if I've asked people this question, Mark, and like, if you knew you were going to die next week, right? How much insurance would you want for your family? What do they always say? As much as the company would give me. So how come you have like 3 times your income?
Right. Well, because, and I will sometimes say, and I'll look at that amount and I'll go, it appears that you're going to be dead for about 3 years. And typically, okay, and I'm sorry for being sexist, women as a group are smarter than men because they get it. Men typically are the ones that go, well, everything is going to be fine. And that's the person who typically has enough that they're going to be, dead for about 3 years, and I hate it when, and men will sometimes say this, well, she'll just remarry and she'll be fine. Okay. And I'll say, yeah, she's got 2 kids. She's very attractive, but those 2 kids that come along with her kind of make her less attractive. And it's like, that makes it hard. Who wants to marry a family? And there are people that marry families. I get it. I want to be respectful of that. But it's like, you can't just turn around and continue on. In fact, one of the chapters in my book, you might recall, is a story about a gentleman that had the proper amount of insurance, thought he was going to get a better deal through his new employer, canceled his insurance, and he was one of these guys. He was ripped. I mean, he was just in great shape. He was a referee for high school basketball. He was 46 years of age, and in the middle of a game, dropped dead because his heart stopped. Okay. His wife now has 2 kids, 2 young children. And she shared with me, and this is in the book, that she basically had to marry someone else, not for love, but for money. And is that the situation that we would want to put our spouses in? That, okay, I didn't do everything that I should have done, so now you got to marry some guy that maybe you're not that crazy about, but he's got money and now he'll take care of you. And it was an unhappy marriage that only lasted maybe about 7 years. And she eventually got out of it. And had the insurance been in place that we had put into place, is that she would never have had to marry someone for money. And that's how communities can change.
Yeah, that's incredible, because you always often hear, and I heard the other day from somebody said, "Oh yeah, you just save this amount of money, and it grows at X%, and this is the amount of money it's going to have at the end." It's like doing the math.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan.
Yeah, how has that worked out the last 2 years?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. This is why you got to have safe money.
Right.
Yeah.
And to that point, I said, this is and you probably you find this through your process and working with clients, is that what happens if X or Y happens? Mm-hmm. How does this plan change? And that's why we're realists. Things are going to change, whether we want them to change or not. And so, having the power to have options and resources and flexibility in what you're doing will give you the power to live the life you actually want, instead of, to your point, like settling or taking trade-offs, and that's all we're trying to provide for people through these strategies and tools to prepare for things that we can't absolutely know for certain they're going to happen or not.
And people always want to try to project, saying, well, based on past performance, I should have X amount of money. The problem with that, and this morning I got my quarterly report from my accountant, and accountants are great. I got a great CPA, but he documents what has happened in the past. He has no idea what I'm doing as a firm in the future. Nobody knows what the market, whatever the market is going to be in the future. So even when we, put together quote unquote hypothetical numbers, let's say for someone's future, and I always like to use really low single digit numbers. I always have a little asterisk that says hypothetical, and then down at the bottom of the piece of paper, because I want people to have the clarity, is that it says in the small print, but we always bring it out and we highlight it, is hypothetical means we made the numbers up. Because I never want to be held at task. Well, you said I'm going to have such and such. And it's like, nobody knows. I have no clue. Would we have figured 5 years ago that we would have gone through, as my wife likes to refer to it, a pandemic? That wasn't in my plan. Working off site for 3 months in the midst of everything and not coming into my own office. That wasn't in my plan. There's a lot of things that aren't in my plan. And you know what? Every single day, it's like, I don't care but what anybody says. It's like we're making it up every single day as far as what our future is going to be, because we don't know. And that's why, again, I love the cash values of permanent whole life insurance. In fact, if you go back to some old textbooks, I actually prefer, instead of the word cash value. I like to use the word reserves because their policy reserves for future needs. And who doesn't want reserves? We want the government to have reserves. You know, Fort Knox has reserves. Why shouldn't we have our own reserves? And this is a great place to plant reserves so we can call upon them for either an emergency. But let's say if you never, ever have an emergency, then they're there for opportunities. And in my world, and I'm talking specifically about me, I've used it to go buy commercial real estate or rental real estate. You know, not saying that that's what a person should be getting into. I think only 2% of the population should, because you sometimes have to do things like snake toilets at 2:00 in the morning. And if you're unwilling to do that, you probably shouldn't be in real estate, because you just, you know, it's not like television where everyone is in Honolulu drinking Mai Tais, just bringing in the rental checks. Okay, those people, yeah, that's not the real world. The real world is you're probably painting and you're taking care of things. It requires some work on your part, okay? But by being able to have the money there, in fact, I'll sometimes say it this way: the money inside your life insurance policy is not for you to go to Disney World, but it might be there for you to buy Disney stock. So if money comes out, I want it to do something for me. That's how I always view it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I to your point, the reserves always feels great, and people, I think it's a smart financial decision for businesses or individual families. But to your point, thinking about how can I leverage it for opportunities to grow my business, to buy real estate, whatever it is that you have sort of passion and knowledge to invest in, right? You can do it, and then let those assets pay for your trips or your car or whatever, instead of always having to pay out of pocket or borrow from a bank, right, to do it. And that's what we're taught. Like, yeah, let's just leverage our future so we can get the things we want now. Well, right. Use some of these assets to secure other assets that can pay for it. What a novel idea, right? And so I love that concept of opportunities, because it isn't all grim. And we talk about, we started off, this conversation talking about, unfortunate things that happen to people, but, it gives us opportunity to expand our thinking of what is possible, right? To build our wealth, to serve others, to impact what we want. And that's the really cool part, I think. And hopefully people can see the brighter side, but if the bad stuff happens, we're okay too.
You're okay.
Right?
You're okay.
You're okay. And, that's the thing. I think I said it to a friend of mine that, months ago, and it just kind of came out. And I said, I could wake up tomorrow and walk. And if I don't wake up the next day, I know my family's taken care of. And the feeling that it provided me, it was like a glow. Like I just felt and I hadn't really said it out loud, and it just came out, and I was like, it's an unbelievable feeling of satisfaction.
I remember, because one of the things that we walk people through is that we make certain that they talk to an attorney and get a will. And it's something that we discuss, I believe, in chapter 4 of our book, and how that played out when both a husband and wife died within a couple of years of each other, leaving 3 kids at home. And these are things that we talk about, but we also know that the chances of losing both parents are so remote, but yet it happens. And when my wife and I think we were 28, maybe 27 years of age, and we got a will completed, talk about a really depressing thing to do that. But I remember walking out of that attorney's office back when I was in my late 20s, just feeling so good, because it's okay, I'd done a grown-up thing. I had made certain that everything was taken care of. And I forget who the quote came from, but someone once said that if you're ready to die today, you can now live forever. It just takes all the pressure off. I mean, the pressure is just removed, because it's okay, that's done. Now I can go have fun. Now, because it's like worst case scenario, I don't even have to think about it any longer. And that's why I think it's important sometimes, because we're talking about some of the death things, is that there's so many wonderful living benefits that are part of a whole life insurance product, a contract where the insurance company contractually is agreeing to do certain things for you. They're guaranteeing a certain amount of money under all circumstances, come hell or high water. In fact, years ago, I remember finding some old policies from a mutual life insurance carrier from the 1930s. And you're probably the same way. You like to deal with old companies that have been around for a long, long time. Well, back in the day, they used to actually collect the premium door to door. Okay, this was this is way before the internet. This is practically before the phone. Okay, where maybe there was only one or two phones even in the neighborhood. But these agents would go door to door, and they would collect the premium to keep these policies going. But what was really interesting from this one policy that I found is that every single year that a dividend was paid by the insurance company, they had a little rubber stamp and an ink pad. And they actually stamped the policy, and this was cool, with the year, and it said dividend paid. And I found this policy that said 1929, dividend paid, 1930, dividend paid, 1931, dividend paid. Now, the reason I'm bringing up those years, that was the Great Depression. And the dividend was above and beyond what the guaranteed contractual value increase was. Now, probably the dividend wasn't a lot, but they were paid. Just the fact that they were paid when other companies were going out of business. Here, people were getting dividends on a life insurance policy during a time of depression when, 1 out of 5 people or more were out of work? So this is, it almost seems like a magical product if you look at it from inception on what these products, America, a lot of people don't realize, because they always think about banks. The biggest amount of money that started America was actually insurance companies. And it wasn't until about the 1970s that people started to buy into the sexy mutual funds and investments because of the way that was all deregulated. So people went from safe, sound, secure, guaranteed to let's kind of gamble and see how we do on this. It's a different mindset. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but you got to be diversified in life as well. I wouldn't have all my money in mutual funds. I wouldn't have all my money in whole life insurance, but I got a lot.
and it can have a second turn to be used somewhere else. Right?
Yeah.
A great part. And you have an account that's ready. If your plan goes the way you're talking about, Mark, fill the bucket back up for the next generation, and that's just incredible. So, Mark, I really appreciate you sharing so much here, so much wisdom around just looking at your financial life and your life in general a little differently and more abundantly. Right? We talk about abundance, and I think you brought a lot of that to this conversation. I'm sure our listeners here will get so much out of it. So, Mark, for you, how best, if anyone wants to learn more about what's involved with I know we didn't cover as much, the financial oscopy in your business, how best to catch up with you?
Probably the best way is actually to go to my book website, because you're able to get some connections to videos and podcasts and blogs that we do. You're able to find up a contact page, and just think of the words all smashed together without the apostrophe, investments.don't-hug.com. And if a person wants to purchase the book, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. If people don't like to read, and if they don't mind listening to my voice, I oftentimes will tell people it's the only way you can shut me off is get the audio through audible.com or iTunes. And it's the type of thing that I put it together very, very specifically, where there will be several love stories followed by a learning chapter, followed by several love story chapters, followed by a learning chapter. So the love stories will help you get all the way through the book. The learning chapters are the type that you'll go, oh, I can use it this way. I can use it that way. It's not all about death. It's about how do we live our life insurance. And you can get the information through investmentsdon'thug.com.
Yeah, I would. Thanks for that, and we'll definitely put that in the show notes. And I've read it. It's a great book. I highly encourage people to read it. It's unlike most of the financial books out there. It's real stuff, right? These are not fabricated stories, and they're really powerful and really highlight sort of what's possible, right? And what can really help families, produce what they want in their lives, right? For their families and the next generation. It's really great stuff. So Mark, thank you for joining me. Super fun. I always enjoy listening to you and talking to you and stealing some of your wisdom. So thanks for sharing today.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me this platform.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life. And abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.